Trevor Zegras edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. We're back, folks, with a lot of news to get into, and one news item in particular that has a lot of Ducks fans really excited, which we will get into. We're gonna go over everything that's happened in the last week of the Anaheim Ducks, the games that happened against the Sharks, the Minnesota Wild, Adam Henrique being placed on waivers, and of course, the news that broke earlier today, Sunday, Trevor Zegras being called up finally to Anaheim. Jake, how are you feeling right now? I feel like this, if you're a Ducks fan, this week was just kind of like an emotional roller coaster.
So you've seen Anchorman, right?
No, I haven't.
Wow. Just not even know something. Well, everyone out there definitely has because it's a classic and you're weird for not having seen it. But I'm essentially Will Ferrell in Anchorman saying I'm in a glass cage of emotion, screaming, not really knowing what to do. My feelings are all over the place. Going from the Ducks actually playing a decent game against San Jose to them being absolute trash against the Wild to Adam Henrique being waived and everything going on with that and the anger and the acceptance and all of these different things that are going on. And then you also have a situation with the Ducks bringing up Trevor Zegras. And this is the moment we've been waiting for, the moment we've speculated on. We've wondered, are the Ducks going to do this? Are they actually going to bring him up? Are they going to keep him down the entire year? What's going to happen here? And it's finally happened. The Ducks, Bob Murray finally, I guess, realized. I don't know. We'll get into kind of some of our logic, our reasonings, our thought process there, because there's a whole lot that we could go over and talk about with that. And don't worry, folks. We will get to all the Zegras talk. We will get to all the Henrique talk. You probably will get a rant from me with Henrique. Don't worry, for everyone out there wanting an angry rant. That's probably a coming. So a whole lot of emotions, a whole lot coming. This is going to be a big episode for everyone. This is one, Felix, you and I were talking about it today. This is a big episode. I'm not sure if we've had one with this much news, this much important news for the Ducks to cover. And one way, today was my dad's birthday, and so I kind of drove by to see him. And he's obviously a big Ducks fan, but this season has turned him off just with kind of how the team's played. He just hasn't been paying attention. And so he follows the team, but obviously nowhere near as depth as I do. And so I mentioned him that Trevor Zegras got recalled, and I was trying to kind of put it into work and explain it kind of how big of a deal this probably is. I would say this is up there with Paul Kariya's first game for the Ducks.
I mean, it could have that magnitude. I mean,
Yeah.
Trevor Zegras is their best prospect since, fill in the blank. It's been a long time since they've had a prospect of that offensive caliber in particular, because they've had really good prospects. John Gibson comes to mind, but it's just different when it's a potential offensive star. It just has a different feel and gravitas than when it's a goalie or a defenseman. It just does. It's not to take anything away from those guys. So, yeah, the fan base does seem really energized. Just kind of looking through my mentions today, I think people, I'm happy for Ducks fans because I do think that they've had it really tough this season. And if we're being honest, the last 3 years, it's not just this season. This season is just more like, the crescendo, so to speak. And so
Yeah.
I think that this was a long time coming, just some kind of positive. And I'm happy to hear that, people like your dad have a reason to tune in and to see what this guy can do on the ice.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's an exciting time. There's a lot to cover, though, with this. So you want to just really quickly, let's kick it off and let's recap this game or these games, and then we will get to kind of the Henrique news.
Yeah, so the biggest theme going into this week was that the Ducks were playing a better brand of hockey as of late. They had two solid performances against the Vegas Golden Knights, actually won one of those games, and that was in Vegas. And of course, as everyone is aware of, the Ducks do tend to really struggle when they play over in Vegas. And so that was a big deal. You had Akins talking about expected goals earlier in the week. It just felt like this team was kind of trending in the right direction. But of course, going into this slate of games, in particular the Wild series, one of the big reservations that we had about the Ducks' improved play was that, how much of this was a product of the fact that they're playing teams like the LA Kings, like the SJ Sharks over and over, and how much of it was them actually improving. And I feel like we kind of got an answer to that this week. So in game one of the week, Monday night, which by the way, we did a broadcast for, I almost said podcast, but I'm going to hold that one back. I'm going to hold that one back. I know you love that one. Um, so the Ducks played the Sharks and they dropped that one 3-2. And I mean, look, this was another game for the Ducks where they played pretty solid. I mean, if you look just at shot attempts, it was 56-44 in favor of Anaheim. They had so many opportunities at 5-on-5. Isaac Lundestrom could easily have had 3 goals in this game, and he just flubbed opportunities or missed the net. Just, it just felt like one of those games where the Ducks were a bit snake bitten, and that was something that they had talked so much about, was finding ways to finish chances off, not being content with just having a lot of chances. And so they dropped that one. Very disappointing. A lot of defensive mistakes. Maybe maybe John Gibson kind of looking like he's taking a bit of a step back.
He's looking human. And
I mean, human, like what is human? Is human average goalie?
Yeah. And so he was below average in that game. I mean, he should have allowed 2 goals and he allowed 3 goals.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, looking at this game though, that's the story to me, is that John Gibson wasn't really good enough for them to win it on his own. And then in terms of the offense, not a lot of finishing. But overall, I know this was a really disappointing loss, but it still felt like, hey, this is another step kind of in the right direction for the Ducks.
Yeah, it 100% was I think a game where, even though they lost, this was the first game where I think Rickard Rakell looked outstanding. This was his best game of the season. And so I think that there were a lot of positives to be taken away. And the conversation after this game was, first off, Dallas Aikens even mentioned expected goals in his press conference the next day, which I think was a big deal for you and me. And he was right that he had basically mentioned, if you look at expected goals, they had seen improved play over their last 6 games or so. And he was correct. The issue is 4 of those 6 games were against one of them was against LA. 3 of those were against the Sharks. So I don't know how much you want to take away. The Golden Knights game, while yes, they played okay, they were above 50% in the second game of that series. It was very low event and they were still struggling to generate. And so that's where, going into the Wild series, I was really interested to see if this was actually improved play, or if this was going to be a situation where it was simply the Ducks playing weaker opposition, and that's where it came from. So we would get our answer, though.
Yes, we did. We 100% got our answer. The first game against the Wild, so the Ducks would drop that one 3-1. I thought that in the opening period, they looked okay. I don't know. I put that out on Twitter, and I got some pretty serious pushback for even, insinuating that the Ducks were playing well, despite being down 2-0 on the score sheet. But if you look at the 5-on-5 numbers, I mean, in terms of shot attempts, 16 of 14, they won the scoring chance battle. It really felt, especially like the first half of the first period, that they were really pressing the issue, getting good shifts, getting, offensive looks. The big thing though was that the Ducks were so far behind in terms of shots on goal. In the first period, they only had 3 shots, and I wasn't as concerned about that because, hey, they had 16 shot attempts. And so, or I guess overall 18 shot attempts if you factor in special teams. So it felt like, hey, looks bad, but there's at least something there. They've showed us enough in the previous games to where I'm giving them the slight benefit of the doubt. And instead, what kind of happened is they couldn't build off of that. They regressed. They couldn't generate anything really after that against the Wild. I mean, they only had 2 scoring chances from high danger areas at 5-on-5 in the second period. They didn't allow any, but it just didn't feel like the Ducks were ever really in it afterwards. And that's despite Sam Steele, who, by the way, I tweeted he needs to go back to the AHL, and within seconds he scored a goal.
Yep, that's how it works.
I'm still not backing down from that take, but he made me look pretty bad in the moment. He must have read my mind. But yeah, I mean, a nice backhand goal for him. And look, his numbers have been okay since he got scratched. It's not like he's necessarily playing awfully, but anyway, the Ducks would drop this one, and it just kind of felt like a very flat performance, very low event game.
Yep.
And of course, I mean, I think the big takeaway from this game and this is something that got talked so much about in the following days, was the infamous 5-on-3, where the Ducks had a 5-on-3 and just could not get anything going. I mean, couldn't even get the puck into the slot, couldn't work it around the perimeter. Nothing was clicking. And it was an extended 5-on-3. It wasn't like just kind of a 10, 20-second 5-on-3. And so a lot of questions did not go unanswered in this game. People who thought, hey, okay, this team is only looking good because they're playing with competition. Well, I think that they got fuel for their fire. People who thought that this team just isn't good, they got fuel for their fire. So there was something for everybody in this game, but it was not trending in the right direction.
Yeah, this I think answered some of the questions that we had in the negative fashion, though. Of yes, it was the weaker competition, and so one of the other newsworthy things come out of this game is Hampus Lindholm left the game hurt in the third period, which leaves a big hole in the left side.
And the Ducks got shelled in his absence.
Yep, and so going into the next game, obviously Henrique was waived. Prior to that, we'll get into more of that conversation. There's a big conversation to be had there. So he was out of the lineup, and Josh Mahura was actually recalled and took the spot of Hampus Lindholm in the second game on, what would that have been? Saturday night. Saturday night.
Yep, so going to Saturday night's game, I mean, you talked about it, but Josh Mahura called up in Hampus Lindholm's absence. Hampus Lindholm is not on IR. He will travel with the team to Arizona tomorrow, or I guess tonight by the time you're listening to this. So we don't necessarily know how severe it is. Aiken said that something got irritated. It sounds like it might be a muscular thing, not like a broken bone or anything like that. So kind of hard to say what's really going on there. The Ducks aren't really letting anything on.
And it seems like they're trying to really kind of play coy a bit. I mean, Josh Mahura was added back to the taxi squad today, which is a situation where they're doing it to essentially create cap space in the sense. So I wouldn't read too much into that for people out there that are seeing Josh Mahura added to the taxi squad, and that means he's out of the lineup necessarily. They could easily call him back up tomorrow and he'll be in the lineup, and we may have more word from that. And especially if Lindholm is out, Josh Mahura will definitely be will be in. So what are your kind of big takeaways from this game? Because I mean, this was yet another game that followed up the first game and really kind of followed the same narrative in a way of the Ducks came out really flat. They really looked bad in this game, especially in the first period. They maybe had a good stretch for a little bit in the second period where they generated chances, and Josh Mahura ended up getting a shot on net that tipped off of David Backes and found the back of the net. And so kind of what were your overall takeaways from this game?
It's, watching this game and the way they came out in that first period and all of the things that they've been saying all week about, having the right intentions, playing with aggression, not waiting for the game to come to you, all these different things that they've been harping on for the last couple of weeks. And then to watch them come out with that flat of an effort. Now, of course, it bears mentioning that there is another team out there, and the Minnesota Wild, I know this is a shock to some people, but they're not a bad team at all. There's a lot of talent.
You and I both had them at third in the West per our preseason rankings?
Yeah, I mean, solidly in the playoffs. But the point is that the Ducks, of course, they can do everything right, but there's still another team out there. And this kind of, we'll get to, I think my biggest takeaway of the night is that, look, the Ducks pushed back after the first period. If you look at the numbers, shot attempts in the second period were 23-8. And David Backes talked a little bit about this after the game, that there was a pushback. They were doing some of the right things, but it just didn't matter because every time they would make a mistake, it would end up in the back of the net. I mean, they gave up 5 goals in this game. I didn't think that John Gibson didn't look any good. I mean, in this one, he got tested. He faced some high danger opportunities, but if you look at all situations, the Ducks expected goals against was 2.96 on natural stat trick, and they allowed 5. So he didn't really do them any favors. I'm not saying he was the reason that they lost, but I just feel like when you come out that poorly, it's just very difficult to come back when you're a team like the Ducks that doesn't have a ton of scores.
Yeah, and one thing I would qualify kind of your statement is with the shot attempts. Well, yes, no doubt the shot attempt battle was pretty good, and same thing with the expected goals in the second period. The one thing is there are score effects, and granted,
that's the thing. They were having to play like that was a back against the wall type of reaction. That was not a, okay, now all of a sudden the Ducks systems
Yep.
are
Exactly.
really just clicking and humming and whirring. Like if you look at the high danger chances in the first period, the Ducks were outchanced 7-0.
Yeah.
Like that's how many, they're now up to probably almost 5 periods this season where they have 0 high danger chances at 5-on-5. And like that's a very troubling sign. And so kind of watching this game, just sitting there, seeing it happen, seeing it unfold. And look, there were some decent performances. I think Max Jones has looked really solid as of late. I mean, he had some really good underlying numbers, but more than that, just watching him play, he's crashing the net. He's trying crazy moves one-on-one. He's chirping away between whistles. Like he's just an irritant out there. And I think he brings a good energy and it translates statistically. And there were some okay performances here and there, but it just got to the point where you kind of just realize, this team, the talent disparity is just too great. I know that people still look at names like Cam Fowler, Ryan Getzlaff, Jakob Silverberg, go down the list and think, yeah, this team has enough talent to be a playoff team. And the fact of the matter is that even if they had maybe a coach that would get more out of them, or that they were producing more, we're not suffering from as much lack of puck luck, I still just think that this team is fundamentally not good enough to be a playoff contender.
Well,
and maybe that's harsh, but what have they shown to really prove otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, we've said it a bunch. This roster doesn't have a first line, and the issue that comes along with that, and we'll get into this conversation more when we get to Adam Henrique, is you're putting guys into position to fail. They are getting matched up against top defense pairings from other teams, when in reality they would potentially get a little bit of a softer matchup. And so with that tougher matchup, sure, you might want to see them excel and thrive with the tougher matchup. But I mean, you also have to put into reality that these players just aren't that good. Like that's not necessarily even meant to be a knock on them per se. That's just simply the reality of the situation, that these players are not first liners. That's not what they are. That's not the position they should be putting in. Yet this is where they are being put into by management, by the coaching staff, by a lot of different things. And the bummer out of all of this is that they're getting called out by management as not being good enough, when in reality the situation is that management has put them in a position to fail, not succeed. And that's on management, that's on coaching, and that should not be put on the players as much as it is. And that is one of my big frustrations, I think, with kind of the quotes that we've gotten of late. Outside of just Adam Henrique, there's been a lot of calling out the veterans on the roster and saying they've underperformed. And sure, they have. They have.
Like
they
no
have.
doubt about it. They haven't been good enough.
They have. But my kind of point in this is that putting that on them isn't necessarily completely fair, because the management of this team has put them in a spot to where they would underperform. They haven't
also, that's the thing, is these guys are not, like, if you are relying upon them to be first liners, they just aren't that.
Yeah.
They haven't been that in a while.
Yeah.
And all you really have to do is like take a peek at the numbers the last couple of years to tell you that. Like, you don't even have to be a statistical maven. You just have to take a peek. Like, look at the WAR timeline charts that we look at.
Yep, exactly. So I think to kind of final takeaways from this Wild game, to circle back to it.
I just want to close it out. I just, before you go ahead, that this felt like a breaking point type game.
Yeah.
Because this reminded me a lot of games we've seen in the past. I think back to those, I think, was it a Dallas game for Carlisle, where it felt like the team just lost it that game. Like there was just something that just went so awry, and I just don't know how much you can get back after that. It really felt that way. And maybe it's still too fresh, it's too raw, and over time, maybe I'm just overreacting, but I think that it felt like it was kind of a breaking point game.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. I think that there's a lot to be taken away from that, especially with kind of where we go to Zegras eventually with this conversation. But I think that plays a part in it for sure, that this game was so bad from an offensive perspective, and the last 2 games were so bad that something had to change as a result of it. And I think that something has to change with the way management views this. I think to circle back to this game, my final thoughts, kind of to do a positive end of it, I think Josh Mahura looked like an NHLer.
Yeah.
I think that's one big positive, and we've talked about this a bunch. Josh Mahura should not be playing in the AHL right now. That plain and simple. He's better than Ben Hutton, better than Jacob Larsson, better than Yanni Hakanpää. I know different handedness, different sides, but to me, he is the 4th or 5th best defenseman in the Ducks system, or like in the roster, on the roster as a whole.
he's very visibly more impactful than any of the guys you mentioned. And Hockenpah had a rough one in this game. Like
Yeah.
he did not look good. That being said, I think it would be interesting to see him in a lower role. I just think that the Hockenpah Fowler experiment, look, their numbers were okay last night, but I don't know. I just am
I'm over
a little
yeah.
a little skeptical on that.
Yeah.
But to me, the big one that just needs to change in the mix on the blue line is Jacob Larson. Um, I mean, it's kind of fascinating how he routinely makes very egregious errors. You think back to the costly turnover, was it against San Jose on Monday, um, where he just coughs up the puck and it ends up in the back of the Ducks net. Was that in the Vegas games?
No,
No,
I
I'm
think
questioning this. No,
I don't
it
know.
was against San Jose. Regardless, he makes egregious mistakes and you never hear a peep about it, not
Yeah.
from anyone. And it's just interesting how he gets off scot-free of any criticism. And yet, guys like Ricard Raquel, who everything in their process checks out, but just haven't gotten the finish, carry such of the blame for this team. So I think if you just plug in Mahura for Larson, you're already in a much better position. I think, like, for example, Ben Hutton would benefit from that because I think he's been okay overall. But part of the reason I think maybe why this team was so flat. Now, of course, we don't have any way of knowing this, but part of the reason that they looked so flat to start the game was because of the news that dropped that very same morning.
Yeah.
Adam Henrique placed on waivers, and by all accounts, Adam Henrique is a very, respected, popular, well thought of guy in that locker room. And so to see him get placed on waivers, I mean, it was a shock. What was your reaction when it happened?
I think basically right away my initial reaction was shock because I don't think I ever thought I would see Adam Henrique on waivers. I mean, he's just such a high profile player that he's not exactly someone you would expect to be put into that situation by the team. Mm-hmm. Trade, sure. I've been saying he should be traded for a while, and I've long said the reason he should be traded isn't because of a negative impact on the roster. It's because of the essentially the fact that he's going to become a depreciating asset, and they should be moving him while he still has value until that contract becomes such a negative that it's so hard to move him. And we're at that point right now, honestly. And so I'm shocked. I'm shocked that they hit this point. I'm shocked that it happened this year also. Like, I did not expect that to, like, in a year or two, sure, maybe I could see that maybe happening, but to happen, and keep in mind, this is year 2 of 5. He has there are 3 years left on this contract after this one. Like, to put him on waivers and be open to someone taking that guy off your hands, someone that is in year 2. Last year was the first year of the deal. Someone that Bob Murray just signed. Like, this is a complete admittal of fault. Like, there's no other way of putting it. Like, Bob Murray may want to paint it in a way, in a rosier picture for himself of saying, Adam Henrique let us down. He's done all this stuff. He's not.
Well, no, that's actually not what they're saying. Like that's the funny thing about this is that they have said, I mean, both Akins and Murray said this isn't just Adam. True. Adam is not alone in this.
Adam's not alone in this yet. He's the one on waivers.
Well, that's the thing, is that not only is he the one on waivers, but he's the only veteran who's been scratched. Like, the only significant veteran, the only high profile veteran who's been scratched. So you've scratched him before, and now you place him on waivers, which is also just kind of like embarrassing. I think of course it's a no crying in baseball type business, and you're never going to feel sorry for these guys, but still, like, it's not a good look for any player to be placed on waivers if you're a player of his caliber. And the thing is with Adam Henrique, look, he hasn't been great this season by any means. The production is not there, but he had 26 goals last year. The Ducks still get the most offense when he's on the ice. There's no other player where the Ducks generate more expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5 than when he is on the ice. Like, his play was just not bad to the point where he's a guy that you can just put on waivers. That's the baffling thing to me.
The thing here is this feels like let me circle back to this because I've said Adam Henrique last year. I said Ducks should be looking to move Henrique. They should be looking to move him. And I've long said the reason they should be looking to move him is not because he has a negative impact on the roster. It's because he's a good player for this team right now. And this team needs to flip over the guys, to flip over the core and get something for Henrique while he has value. And now he doesn't. And so kind of circling back, the issue right now is that Bob Murray only wants to get rid of him. Let's be clear here.
Yeah.
The only reason why he wants to get rid of him is because he believes that he does not help this team right now, that he thinks that he is a negative drag on this team, that he makes the Ducks worse. That is the reason why Bob Murray thinks that he should be gone. This is not because it's rebuilding. Bob Murray has made that clear in his statements, and if you take his statements at face value, which granted is a little bit, puts you at risk slightly, but he's made it clear that he thinks that has to be done for the team right now. This is not a situation because of that. And the issue that I have with this overall, he should have been moved last summer. Mm-hmm. He should have been moved last summer when I think, correct me if you disagree with this or disagree with this if you want, I think last summer he was on pace for a 50-point season last year. You could have potentially gotten a 4th-round pick for him. You could have gotten something. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Well, I will agree with the notion that he had more value last summer than he does right now.
Yes.
I mean, if you were like, and that's the problem with these moves by Bob Murray is that they always feel so reactionary. There doesn't seem to be any kind of vision here, or there never seems to be any kind of proactive steps that are really taken. Because look, if you had it in the back of your mind that Adam Henrique is a guy you want to move, last summer would have been the time to do it. And now instead his value has completely depreciated, or not completely, but like it is at a low point right now.
Oh, it's completely depreciated. He cleared waivers. No one wanted him for free. Let's make that clear.
Part of that is the contract. But I do think that, look, if they were on the fence about Adam Henrique, if they had some doubts about his game, then you had a window to do it. And so maybe they didn't have, like, this is the flip side, which I think is the more concerning side, is that maybe they thought he was all good to go and there are no issues with this game. And then all of a sudden, these first however many games completely changed their minds to the point where they are waiving him. It just feels like there's no actual plan here.
And
except for
the other thing
punish.
the other thing is, and this is kind of where I was trying to get at, that with Bob Murray, the other issue here is it's the fact that obviously didn't move him and is only looking to move him now because he thinks he's having a negative impact on the roster. The other issue that's happening here is the player evaluation is completely off because he's not having a negative impact on the roster. Well, this is a gross overreaction to goals for percentage. So we talk about this a bunch. We look at expected goals for, we look at Corsi for percentage. We look at these things where you have a larger sample. They're based on shots, so you get a larger sample over 17 games. When he is on the ice, the Ducks get the majority of the shots and the majority of the chances. He's over 50% in both. And so that is significant for a Ducks team that is not over 50% on the whole. The issue for the Ducks is he is at 40% goals for percentage. So in pure raw goals, the Ducks get scored on more than they score for when he's on the ice. The issue here is that pure goals are a much smaller sample size and are more open to variance. And the best predictor of future goals for percentage is not actually your goals for percentage now. It is Corsi for percentage. It is expected goals for percentage because they're based on shots. They're less likely to be affected by variance. So basically, the Ducks are making this whole rationale about Adam Henrique having a negative impact on the roster based upon something that is highly variable.
Out of his control.
Out of his control, something that even if they think he looks like he's playing bad as a result of that, he's actually playing well. They like plus minus is similar to goals for percent. It's beyond baffling the player evaluation aspect of this. It's beyond baffling the lack of ability to understand how you should run a team. It's so baffling. It's so frustrating. And this is the most frustrated I think I've ever been with Bob Murray as the general manager of the Ducks. Because in reality, if you were looking to move Adam Henrique, you should not be doing it as a reactionary move. Yeah, this needs to be something with foresight. This needs to be something that you plan out. He should be moved. Don't get me wrong. He should be moved. This is something that
Well,
should
hold
have.
on. Hold on. So what is your reason? Because I don't think your reason is the same as
No.
his where he
So
should be moved.
my reason for him being moved is a bunch of things. First off, obviously the contract's not good. That we've said that since the beginning. There's no doubt. That's the reason why he isn't claimed. It's a bad contract. Bob Murray gave him that deal. Bob
Yeah.
Murray is at fault for that contract.
That's the thing is he was so willing. Like, here's the thing: he was so willing to give him that contract at the time, and this early into it, he is now ready to jump ship. Like that shows that whatever evaluation was made at the time was probably inaccurate, or he has no faith that the vision he had back then can still hold true through the rougher waters. Because look, a player that you sign to a 5-year deal is probably not going to be awesome the entire time.
No.
There are going to be rough patches,
Yeah.
and that's part of the commitment from the team side is you have to be kind of willing to live with those rough patches. And so it's like you were alluding to with, I mean, not, you weren't even alluding to it, you were putting it right out there for everybody. If the Ducks just looked at these numbers and kind of had a better understanding of them beyond Dallas Eakins, because Dallas Eakins, we know looks at them, but I don't think Dallas Eakins is in the room for all these decisions, or at least he's not the one making the final call. If they had a better appreciation for these numbers, I think that they would come away from it thinking, yeah, Adam Henrique hasn't been awesome. He hasn't been, he hasn't lived up to his contract, but he hasn't just become a crappy player overnight. Like there is still value there. And with time, he's probably going to start putting a few in the back of the net.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to start going his way. He's going to get points. They will come. And so kind of you asked me the question about why I think he should be traded. The reason why I think he should be traded is Adam Henrique is part of this older core of the team. He is currently, I think, 31 years old. I think he shares the same birthday as me, but is a year older. 31 years old. His value is going to be depreciating because basically we know from aging curves that once you leave your late 20s, you can basically decline in value real quick. Your scoring prime has left you. There can be a very steep drop-off for guys, especially guys that play the way Adam Henrique does. And so when you wanted to move him whenever you can so that you could get something in return, even if it was just a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, whatever round pick it was, at least it was something of value in return for him. And that was the key thing. And the Ducks were not necessarily looking to do that. They thought Adam Henrique was a big part of this team, was a big part of them making the playoffs. And instead of having that foresight to understand, hey, he's 31 years old. Hey, he's going to start.
There will be dips.
There are going to start being dips, and we should be looking to move on. First off, the Ducks extended someone like that and gave him that contract. Like I said, once again, year 2 of the deal.
It was a bad contract from the moment it was signed.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, I think where I'm at with this is it's frustrating on so many levels. It's frustrating on player evaluation. It's frustrating on overall management of a roster. It's frustrating on man management. Like, how would you feel if you're in that locker room right now?
We have insight on that.
Well, how would you feel if you're in that locker room right now and you are, for instance, Jakob Silfverberg? Jakob Silfverberg is on the same exact term deal as Adam Henrique. Year 2 of 5 of an extension.
Yeah, but the thing is, Jakob Silfverberg doesn't get judged by how many goals he puts away.
But
he's safe.
we thought Adam Henrique was was there ever indication last year that Adam Henrique was in hot water with the organization? No.
Well, no, but because he scored 26 goals.
Yes.
But what if he's one of those guys who gets judged by that single statistic?
But if you are Jakob Silfverberg, what wouldn't you start thinking? Oh, next year maybe if my performance goes down, or if something happens, I'm gonna be on waivers. If the counting stats aren't there, will I be on waivers? So
that's what Backus said after the game yesterday. He said, like, for some guys, I mean, maybe getting out of that chaos, right, can get you more in the zone. But it can also have you looking over your shoulder,
which is not a good place to be.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and plus, like, again, Henrique just hasn't been bad enough to really warrant this. So, okay. To me, it's very obvious that the thought process behind this is flawed. Like, that the evaluation of this is very flawed. Now we have to think about moving forward.
Yep.
Because, like, there's no sense in
real quick here,
dwelling.
want to just add this one point to it before we move forward
Okay.
on this. The other thing here that I wonder how this is going to go is Adam Henrique had a no trade clause, 10 team, I think, something along those lines, where he had a 10 team no list, I believe is where it was at. And I'll look that up. Yeah,
that is correct.
10 team no list. I wonder if he's going to be open to moving that now, or open to waiving that now as a result to be moved. And so, I mean, this is a transition to moving forward and kind of what the Ducks do from here.
So here's the thing. He cleared waivers this morning, and I kind of thought maybe there's a chance he gets claimed by like an Ottawa or a Detroit or someone that just, doesn't have a lot of money, but it wouldn't make a ton of sense for those teams either to just to take on a contract like that. And so nobody claimed him, and now he's on the taxi squad, is my understanding. And Dallas Eakins talked about, like there's a path forward if he were ever to come back in the lineup, but the way that everybody was talking about it, it just seems like this is it for Adam Henrique in Anaheim. Like the bridge has been burned. They've already pissed him off with the scratch. I can't imagine that this went over very well. And like, this just doesn't feel like a situation that you can really mend. And so I think now the question for the Ducks becomes, how do you get out of this situation while also, because now they're in a situation where they're probably going to have to almost pay somebody to take him on. They're going to have to attach a draft pick to Adam Henrique to get anything of value. They're probably going to have to retain at least, 25% of the salary just to make it work for teams. Like they've made this kind of a very complicated situation that like we were saying, it didn't necessarily need to be that.
Yeah, 100%. The best kind of, not example, but comparison I can make is David Backes last year. I think
he is the cautionary tale.
Like
right?
I think that David Backes maybe I think Henrique has more value because he has more on ice value I think right now than David Backes did back then. I think Adam Henrique is clearly
he's younger.
Yeah. Adam Henrique's younger, a middle six forward. The issue, I guess, that you have is Adam Henrique has 3 years left on his deal, whereas David Backes had 1 year left on his deal. And so after the current season. And so that's kind of the issue that you're at. And so, we need to really wait and see if the Ducks can somehow, some way get rid of Adam Henrique's contract and not have to take anything back. Fully get rid of his contract. I think that's a net win for the Ducks to clear up cap space. I think Adam Henrique, that's a net win long term. Let me phrase it like that, because I think that Adam Henrique makes this team better right now, but you and I both agree this team is not a playoff team as currently constructed. So right now really doesn't matter for this team. And so clearing out that deal is more important than the on ice impact as of right now.
I agree. And I think that what's important to note, and something we haven't really talked about yet, is that there's this whole notion that, well, of course the Ducks tried to shop him. They couldn't trade him, and now they put him on waivers as kind of this last-ditch attempt to get rid of him. And so because nobody took him the first time with the trade and nobody claimed him, how can you possibly say that there's even a chance that they could get anything back for him, or that they could trade him? My response to that would just be, we don't actually know if they shopped him before. We can kind of guess, we can assume, but we don't actually know. And the way I would see it is, okay, first step, try to make a real trade where you just move him and get assets back, and you're not having to play the whole, okay, pay you to take him type deal. That falls through. Okay, maybe there are two other possible options here. Either we have to pay somebody to take him off our hands, or we just basically cut bait and put him on waivers, and maybe somebody just takes him off our hands, and we don't get anything in return, but at the very least, we're done with that contract. Like, it's just over. So this was kind of like a Hail Mary. Now that has not worked out, now I think they go into their very last kind of least desirable option, which is, okay, retain or attach, just kind of do this very undesirable deal, but one that you have to make just to get out of the situation. Like, to me, this is now the situation they're in now is the last one that they had in mind. They have exhausted the other options, would be my guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I mean, we've seen with guys like Galchenyuk of late that will go on waivers, get offered up, and then get traded fairly soon afterwards. And so
Yeah.
I think especially right now.
Well, Galchenyuk is kind of different though. I mean,
No, no, I
you don't have
know.
the contract implication.
No, I
But yeah,
know. But I think part of it is
but it's not a death knell to a guy's
I
traded outcome if he
and
clears
he
waivers.
could have some more value for a team being waiver eligible or
Well,
waiver exempt now because he can go back and forth on the taxi squad and be buried on
well,
the taxi squad
if
if you
I was
want.
a smart team, I would look at the situation and say, hey, we can get a good player at a discount. I mean, yeah, you don't love that term. It's not a situation that is necessarily ideal, but a team that is, in need of offense can get a good offensive player at a pretty, steep discount. And Adam Henrique's not bad defensively either. Like he can still add value to teams. And, if you're that team, okay, you get him at a severe discount. And by the time his game inevitably picks up, both by just variance and being in a better situation, then maybe you can flip him again for actual value
Yeah,
this time.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah, it would be nuts if someone actually got him and were
I
able to.
think I think that
Well,
that's fully possible.
oh,
By
it's
the way,
possible that someone gets him at retained value and
mm-hmm.
maybe even gets a pick from the Ducks as a sweetener to take him. He
Yeah,
goes to that team, thrives, and they're able to flip him for assets.
I think that's 100%
Like,
possible.
I think to put a bow on all of this, all of this does not paint a rosy picture for Bob Murray.
Well, it doesn't because he's pinned himself into a corner unnecessarily.
Yes, agreed. He's pinned himself into a corner. He is admitting fault on signing a deal that he recently signed. He is now willing to sit in the taxi squad, a guy that's making $5.8 million a season, and to me, this is not a good look for a guy that is potentially on the hot seat. And I think if Henry and Susan Samueli are looking at this, I think, first off, one of the things that has ran through my head, this is pure speculation. Part of me wonders if that they have given him the decree to kind of try to cut salary. That is one thing that I've thought about within the situation. So that's why he's trying to get rid of Henrique. But regardless of that, I think that the Samuelis can't be happy to have a guy making $5.8 million not playing hockey. I mean,
this season, Adam Henrique is the third highest paid player on the Ducks after Gibson and Getzlaf. So, yeah, he makes a lot of money, but I don't think it's all about that just because they've scratched him in the past. Like there's clearly a dissatisfaction with this game. Not saying that you're wrong or anything. But to put a bow on this, maybe I'm sure that there's still more we could say. I do want to add that I think this is a complete mess. The Ducks have 100% not done this correctly by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think in a weird way, long term, this is still probably going to be an okay thing because we have talked about it many times. The Ducks need to start tearing down this current core. It does not work. It has been it was proven not to work before this year, and this year is just kind of putting it in bold print that this team, as currently constructed, doesn't work. And also, you don't have the assets to go and get that next piece, right? To kind of push everybody down. They haven't been able to do that. We've known that Bob Murray has swung and missed on multiple deals. So this is a step in that direction, in the kind of move on. At least it would appear to be so. And that, to me, is the big caveat out of all of this.
He's going backwards into it, but yes, the reasoning isn't necessarily there. The reasoning is not actually correct, but the end game is going to be the same from it.
Yes, and in addition to that caveat, what does concern me slightly is what will they do after this? So if this indeed becomes a situation where, okay, the franchise is moving on from this core and will continue to strip down over time, and this was kind of the catalyst towards that, then this is a great outcome because to me, that's what this team needs to do. If this is just, we're moving on from Adam Henrique, but we have no intention, can't stop, won't stop trying to make the playoffs, and they're just going to try to shoehorn in another guy with that cap space, then this is just all kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I have a feeling though that I don't know why, maybe it's just my gut, maybe it's reading between the tea leaves, but I do get the impression this is more in the column A of starting to kind of tear it down.
Yeah.
That's what it appears to be.
I mean, and maybe it is a decree from ownership to start doing that. I mean,
Yeah,
the Samiolis can't be happy having a product that is
and
this
they are
embarrassing on the ice
they
that
are very smart people,
and they are
right?
spending a lot of money on this team.
They're spending a fortune to have a very subpar product, and there's no fans. Like the revenue
Oh,
isn't there right now. Like this is a very brutal situation for them, and I think, yeah, like in a weird way, like the pandemic may have saved the Ducks long term because it's getting them potentially out of this kind of just cobbled together roster that never totally made sense to begin with.
all right. Before we get a word from our sponsor, chimes in the Twitch chat with something that I think is very true about this move and how it feels from Bob Murray. It's the "we need to do something. This is something we need to do it" move from Bob Murray.
It's possible. I just think they have an issue with Henrique.
It's possible.
Like this is a theme now.
It just feels as if it came out of nowhere. It feels like Bob Murray. This is Bob Murray. I mean, his standard game.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry. One thing that I want to bring up also that I forgot about that Fatcheralt brought up, and I want to get your take on it because I think it is something worth mentioning. I don't necessarily agree with it, but what if this move of putting him on waivers was a warning shot to the roster? Essentially meant to be a wake-up call more so than anything else. And there is not actual, and Henrique is not actually traded. It was meant to be kind of a wake-up call to the roster in reality.
I mean, that would just make this ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you are going to such great lengths just to send a quote unquote wake up call.
Yeah, send a message.
I mean, that would be absurd.
Yeah.
Like that would be childish. So if you're a fan of this team, you better hope that's not what it is. It doesn't seem to be that way though, because there's just so many other reasons for it.
Well, and you're putting a guy on waivers is legitimately a way to lose a player. That's not
exactly.
That's not a warning shot. That is
and you heard the line of the Ducks expect him to clear, but you don't know that, right?
Yeah, he could be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, so
okay.
Let's have a little bit of a word from our sponsor.
Okay.
So, hey fellas, we are in the thick of winter and a storm's a brewing. It looks like 1 to 3 inches are in the forecast when you trim that hibernation bush that's taking place in your pants. Luckily, our partners at Manscaped specialize in products to make sure you're walking around town with beautiful snowballs. So Felix, Manscaped has sent us a couple of their different products. What have you thought about the Lawnmower 3.0?
Yeah, I've absolutely loved it. As someone who, I experience body hair. I just do. I experience it probably more than I would like to. And the Lawnmower 3.0 has actually really stepped up my game in that regard. I mean, it's definitely the best hygiene tool for the modern man because of their ceramic blade and advanced skin-safe technology. Your snags on your snowballs will be reduced. The trimmer is also waterproof, so you can trim in the shower or jacuzzi if you're a savage. So, I mean, that to me is kind of the other thing that I like about it is that you don't have to worry about when and where you're doing it. You'll still be good to go. So yeah, I've been a big fan of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm someone that has a little bit of some nose hairs. Let's go with that. I'm constantly bugged by my wife to do a little bit of a better job of cleaning it up. and so that's where Manscaped, if you're like me and have that situation, Manscaped has your back with the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer. So you are able, this is their specific ear and nose hair trimmer. Works fantastic. My wife is very happy whenever I use it because she does not have to look at hair sticking out of my nose.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. And so the other things that they have a great performance boxer brief, and you get a travel bag also. So their performance package comes with the Lawnmower 3.0, the Weed Whacker, their boxer briefs, and a travel bag. And so, you might as well have the best tools for the job, right?
I agree. I 100% agree. And the bundle also comes with the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner. So the Crop Preserver is anti-chafing ball deodorant that will make your balls smell nice and make you feel like your testes are walking in a winter wonderland. I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. I mean, as kind of crazy as that may sound, you want to smell good, and that's what the Crop Preserver will allow you to do. And then the Crop Reviver is a spray-on toner for your balls. It's made with soothing aloe. Who doesn't love soothing aloe? and witch hazel extracts. Don't even know what that is. Sounds good though. That will make your balls look up at you and say thank you. So if you really want to enhance that relationship, maybe it's a bit rocky right now, the Crop Reviver will do that for you. Don't get cold feet this winter. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CTP at manscaped.com. So once again, 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code CTP. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use our code CTP, just like Crash the Pond. Thank you, Manscaped, for making our winter wieners look so good. Thank you for that. Love that.
Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that. Apologies if you didn't.
At this point, I'm really sorry if you don't, but that's why there's a skip button, right?
All right. So I think it's time for some fun talk. So the first, let's see here. The first 50 minutes of this podcast were a little bit dreary. Right?
We're 50 minutes in.
We're 50 minutes in.
Yeah, I do apologize. I'd like to apologize to everybody for the tone, because there is still going to be a lot of positive here to get into.
We wanted to give everyone the bad news at the front so they can leave the podcast with a very kind of warm and fuzzy feeling at the end of it all.
Warm and fuzzy?
Yes, warm and fuzzy.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's just dive into it, though. I think we got to get back to business here. Trevor Zegras announced that he was called up today. The way it broke down, we could get into the minutia of it, but the takeaway, the end conclusion is that he has been called up. He skated on a line today with Jakob Silfverberg and Sam Steele, and he was told last night after the Goals game by the Goals GM that he was being called up. He said, practice at Honda Center tomorrow. Congrats, pal. And so that, it's a feel-good story. We've learned, listening to Trevor Zegras' interview, that his parents are flying out to Arizona to catch the game. We don't know for sure yet if he's going to play on Monday night. I would put money that he plays Monday. At very worst, he plays Wednesday. Dallas Eakins has said that he will play on their power play. That is 100% something that will happen. Dallas Eakins kind of did the old thing where he waffles when he asked about, is he a center? Is he a winger? What does he need to work on? Kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth there, as coaches do. Totally understandable. But he was very emphatic about the fact that he will play on the power play. So I think that we can write that one down in ink. And look, Trevor Zegras is going to play in the NHL. He's going to wear number 46, which had a bit of a laugh about that at the press conference. They asked him if he had asked for number 13, and he said number 46 is my number, kind of with a smile on his face. So, Jake, how are you feeling? I feel like you needed this more than anyone.
So let me start with this real quick. This is long overdue. We've had a lot of people watching the show, a lot of people subscribing. So I want to really quickly give a shout out to everyone who has resubbed. We've got Fat Geralt resub for 3 months. Heyo Deflo resub for 5 months in a row. We have an Arrow Res has subscribed for the very first time. JLXX has 80 has subscribed for the first time. So thank you so much to all of you for subbing to the Twitch channel. Thank you so much. Let me get to this. Before we get into Zegras, there were a lot of moves today. So let me just quickly break it down for everyone. I know you love this. This is what you're here for, Felix. You enjoy this so much. Really quick, let me just say this because there is one of these that is important along with Zegras. Zegras was sent to the Ducks, Stolarz to the taxi squad, Jacob Perreault back to the Goals from the taxi squad, Sonny Milano, this is the big one, added to the Ducks roster, Lettieri to the taxi squad, Dostal to the Goals, DeLeo to the Goals, Mahura back to the taxi squad, and Adam Henrique to the taxi squad. So Sonny Milano and Trevor Zegras both added to the Ducks roster. That is of importance because last night they looked really good together.
Hooked up for a goal.
They hooked up for a goal. Trevor Zegras had 2 goals. Doesn't appear as if Milano is going to draw in based upon what we got from the line information. It seemed like Trevor Zegras was skating with Sam Steele and Jakob Silfverberg, so Sonny Milano not on the line with him. But as we get into this, this was good news. This was a shot in the arm that I kind of needed after the last couple days of frustration. This team was so frustrating, not only on the ice, but off the ice. It made no sense. It was frustrating. It felt like rock bottom. I don't really know if there's any other way to put it than rock bottom. Like, this is it was extremely frustrating. And so part of me wonders if this move was done as a kind of PR type move, because the Ducks were getting hammered by even the media. Eric Stevens had an article out today, essentially one of the more critical takes on management of the Ducks that I've seen in the media of late.
Well, he's calling for the heads of management, which is not something that we've seen Eric Stevens do. And look, it's not some hot take. Like, this is all founded in evidence and time. And so, yeah, not unreasonable. And look, to the notion that they did this for PR, I have a hard time believing that. And here's why. I think that they have been so protective of him.
True.
They have kept him out of the lineup when there would have been plenty of, like, if they had put him in to start the year after the World Junior performance he had, I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. If they had called him up 2 weeks ago when he was still lighting up the AHL and the Ducks were struggling to score, it would have been justified. So I think that just because of how protective they've been of him, I would assume they wouldn't just throw him into the fire to win some points with the crowd.
That's fair. I am just simply kind of addressing a narrative that is slightly out there.
I don't think it's unreasonable, but I do think that it kind of falls apart when you start talking about it.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And so I think the more logical reasoning is after last night's performance, with how poor the Ducks were at generating offense and just really how poor the power play was. What I think is more likely the reasoning is that was the final straw. You mentioned it after that game that this felt like rock bottom. This felt like something had to change. And this was the domino to fall. This was the move to make. Trevor Zegras, for whatever reason, they thought that he should be in the AHL this year and to start the season at least. And I mean, he's done everything they've asked for and more.
Does this mean he's better than someone on the Ducks roster now?
I guess so. I guess as if him putting up 9 points in 8 games in the AHL so far this year and 6 points in 4 preseason games. And here's the thing.
That line, just frame that line somewhere.
Yeah, and so it's just he should have been on the Ducks roster to start the year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. He is better than Isaac Lundestrom. He is probably better than Danton Heinen. He's better than a fair amount of players on this Ducks roster as of right now. And the fact that he wasn't on this roster to start is a damn shame. When I tweeted out that, because I think we were some of the first people, because of us being able to monitor the Ducks roster a little bit, we saw that move and instantly put it out there. And Byron Bader, a good friend of the podcast, actually quote tweeted me. And here was his take: might never see another AHL game.
Well, that's the thing. Based on what we know, you have it up. What's his star probability?
I do not actually have it up right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go ahead and get that up as we speak.
Let me bring it up. But the point is, Trevor Zegras is so good that, per Byron Bader's take on that, it's just possible that he's going to shine so much to the point where they don't send him back down, where he's a guy that it just doesn't make sense to send him down. Now, that being said, I would caution that a little bit, just because this is the Anaheim Ducks that we're talking about.
Yep.
And so we just don't know how they're going to go about this. But now that he's up, we've talked about your reaction and how happy you are. What are you expecting from him, or what do you think is a reasonable expectation to have of how he'll look in a Ducks uniform?
I would say try not to expect him to have a point in his first game. I think I think it would be nice to see, but I'm not necessarily looking for that. I think that having a more realistic expectation of just being able to create offense. I mean, I've said this a lot about prospects. The way that I view a prospect when they jump in the lineup is the key thing here is a prospect. I want them to show me what they can do. I want them to show me in a flash, because the key difference between a prospect and a kind of a more long-term NHL player is consistency. That's to me the biggest difference there. A star player, or not a star player, but a long-term NHLer can play the game night in, night out. They're consistently there. They're consistently producing. Whereas a more prospect type of player, that's the biggest thing they have to learn, is how to do this night in, night out. And the thing for Trevor Zegras is I just want to see a couple of plays from him. where he shows that star talent that he has, where he shows his ability to make a pass out of nowhere. And what we've seen in the AHL from him, and this has been my only concern with him in the AHL, is he's just not playing with good enough line mates. And they're not able to read off of him well enough. And
take that Sam Carrick slander and just, do what you got to do with it.
It's not meant to be a knock on Sam Carrick. It's not meant to be a knock on Chase DeLeo.
I'm actually just trolling you.
I 100% know, but just for everyone out there. But if you were to watch the goals games, he would like hit those guys up with perfect passes in dangerous spots, and they just wouldn't expect it. It would blow up off their stick as a result, and he would hit them right on the stick. I'm wondering, so he's going to be playing on a line with Sam Steele and Jakob Silfverberg. I don't absolutely love that because I don't think Sam Steele is necessarily the best center to put him with.
Well, so here was Aiken's reasoning on that. He said that he needs to play with the center who has, he needs to play with guys who have experience, offensive guys who have experience, guys who are responsible. And so I guess Sam Steele is a guy with experience at this point. And, I think the Silfverberg fit makes sense because Silfverberg does like to get shots off. They don't always tend to be the highest danger shots, but he does like to get shots off, and he's sound defensively. So it makes sense next to a guy like Zegras where you don't necessarily know what you're going to get from him defensively to start. But with Sam Steele, I just don't understand the fit at all.
I don't either. I don't either. Mm-hmm. Hockey Boys brings up a good point. Does Getzlaf have experience? Asking for a friend.
Well, so Aikens did bring up Getzlaf's name as a possible guy that Zegras could play with. He also brought up Ricard Raquel. So it sounds like they're going to shuffle him around until he finds the right home. I wouldn't look at this as kind of like a set in stone. This is where he'll be.
And what we've seen from Dallas Aikens and from the Ducks in the last little bit is Dallas Aikens hasn't been afraid to necessarily shift things up.
They're willing to move it around if it's not working.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say be open to that. If I would put it at 95% that he plays tomorrow. I would put it at that high that I expect him to play tomorrow. For you don't call him up straight to the roster for also. I should add that he was not added to the taxi squad. He was added to the Ducks roster for a reason. He is taxi squad eligible. So there is no reason to add him to the Ducks roster if you are not intending to play him. Any sort of other conversation from Dallas Aikens is purely trying to throw people off the trail. That's where I'm at with this. He's playing tomorrow. And I think everyone should be excited. This is going to be the most excited I am for a Ducks game in a long, long time. And it's going to be must-watch television for me whenever he's on the ice.
Well, what's funny is that Aikens was pretty coy in his answer because he didn't actually say he wasn't playing. He just said, well, we're actually having a meeting about the lineup after this, which is so convenient for having to answer that question. So he didn't say no, and I would imagine he'll play. Yeah. I don't see a way around that. My expectation, I do think his skill level will be very apparent from the start. I think that he is such a talented player. You saw how seamlessly he made the transition to the AHL. And look, like Trevor Zegras is coming from the NCAA and World Juniors. Like there was, it wasn't like he had any other pro experience before this. And he didn't play a ton of hockey in the last year because of the pandemic. And he immediately looked great in the AHL. Like he did not miss a beat. And so I would expect it to be a very similar transition in the NHL, perhaps not to the degree in the AHL, but I do think we're going to notice he's going to make a pass. He's going to make a play at center ice, entering the zone. And you're just going to think to yourself, wow, why has this guy been in the AHL? Now, defensively, that's something he talked about today is like part of the adjustment to playing wing has been winning those board battles, has been kind of having less time to make decisions. And I think that may be tough for him early on, but as time goes on, his hockey sense is so high, his ability to read and react is so high, and to see things before other guys that it will not take very long.
I think one of the biggest spots where we're going to see him is if the Ducks get power plays tomorrow. You will instantly see his impact on that power play because one of the things, one of the big parts of Trevor Zegras' game,
if the Ducks get a power play,
yes, one of the big things in Trevor Zegras' game is deception. I mean, that is the key element of his game, where he's able to look off guys and throw out so much misinformation that it's hard to necessarily read the play he's going to make. If you look at a lot of the passes that he makes, they're successful. It's kind of coming out of nowhere and very difficult to read. He's not an easy guy to defend because of a result of that, and that's something that's really important on the power play. And one of the things that the Ducks are missing on the whole with their power play is someone that can do that. Ryan Getzlaf for a long time kind of sort of did that, but he's more of a guy. I was trying, kind of going back to kind of a conversation I had with my dad today, trying to explain. He's a playmaker like Getzlaf, but he's also so different. Getzlaf was a guy Getzlaf was a guy that would use his strength to be able to fend off guys and then be able to pull off a pass after he sucked in players to him because of his physicality and be able to make a perfect pass.
Yes.
Trevor Zegras is a guy that doesn't want necessarily that pressure. He's a guy that's able to keep guys off of him due to his deception, due to kind of all of the misinformation that he throws out while he's on the ice. And that's how he's able to create plays and create chances for others, is by that misinformation. So I'm really excited to see what he can do with this power play, see what he can do with the puck on a stick with a little bit more time and space that he's going to get on that power play. And so I think that's where you're going to see him have his greatest impact, because that's where he's going to have the most time and space.
Yeah. And just to something that I don't think we've mentioned yet, but we've talked about before we started recording, is that Zegras mentioned his parents are coming out to the games in Arizona. So like,
yeah,
he's not coming up for. He's gonna play. He's gonna play in one. He's gonna play at worst on Wednesday. Like the family's not flying out to watch him, to hang out with him in the press box or something, right?
Yeah. They're not flying out from New York.
I will say I do love the fact that they get to watch his first NHL game in a season where, it's maybe they could have watched it anyway, if it was in Anaheim or LA, but I just love the fact that they'll be able to watch him play. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I think to your point about Getzlaf, it is an interesting point because, Ryan Getzlaf does use his size to really kind of ward off defenders and buy himself time to make that pass. Whereas Zegras is a lot more manipulative with the puck. Like I think he's got much better hands than Getzlaf. And part of that is just because of the way the game has shifted and the fact that guys are just more skilled now, but he creates openings. It's not just a matter of kind of waiting, and then strike. He is making lanes, creating them out of thin air just by the way he stick handles and the way he's able to be so shifty on his edges. I mean, the way I kind of see Zegras and his play style, and, Aikens today was talking about how much he hates player comps and how much of an insult it is to the guys that are being put into the comparison. But I'm sorry, Dallas Eakins, but Trevor Zegras reminds me a lot of Patrick Kane because of how shifty he is with the puck, because of how quick he is handling it and creating openings. He's not exactly the same player. I don't think he is quite as good of a shot as Patrick Kane, at least not right now. But to me, that is the player he probably reminds me the most of. I've heard a lot of people compare him to Austin Matthews. I have time for that comparison as well.
I've heard Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, Pettersson, I could see it, but he's not quite on that level in terms of a shooter. But sure, I mean, the point is these are all great comparisons to have. Like if someone's putting you in that same sentence, now we're not saying that this is who he's going to be in terms of impact, but just in the way that he plays.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things. But I don't know, just everything that we've seen from Trevor Zegras so far leads me to believe that he will be a good NHLer right away. And maybe I'll be wrong about this, but I really do think that the Ducks are going to be kind of kicking themselves maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Like what was the point of all this?
Well,
okay, great. He got his feet wet. He got his reps. He had to earn it. But realistically, if this guy had been in the lineup from day one, we haven't even seen him play yet, so maybe we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. But if he had been in the lineup from day one, how much different of a position would they be in right now?
Yeah, so here's a question that I have for you on this, and one thing kind of where I'm going back and forth on. Well, not back and forth on. I know my response to this. If he comes out and if he instantly has an impact on the offense, where instead of scoring, I mean, the Ducks are averaging maybe a goal a game right now. I think that might be maybe it's more. If that jumps up to they're averaging 2 goals a game with him playing, how bad does Bob Murray look for the decision to put him in the minors to start the year?
I mean, I think
do you think he looks bad, or do you think that what he did looks warranted?
well, that's the thing. It's just going to depend who you ask, because the Ducks will say it's because we protected him and let him build up to it. Critics will say it's because it would have always been like this. It doesn't matter. I would fall on the side of, yeah, like nothing has changed because he played in the AHL. He would have been this, if he does play well, he would have been this good anyway. I don't think there's actually any causality there. It's just something that the team can now point to. And look, I get it, because we're not in the seat to make that decision. And I do think that when you have such a high level prospect, it is, there is some anxiety there of putting him in too soon. And maybe it doesn't work out, and then all of a sudden you've really shifted his development in a negative way. But that being said, if you have confidence in the player, 8 games in the AHL is not going to make that difference one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not, like, now that you've called him up, you're essentially conceding that he didn't actually need that much time anyway, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of a weird situation. This debate is not super interesting to me, but I do think it's at least worth addressing.
Yep, exactly. All right, so I think it's about time we get into some questions. Or you got anything you want? Well, here, let me ask you this: what's your lineup prediction for tomorrow for the forward lines? Do you think that they just keep the same lineup as last game, with essentially just swapping in Trevor Zegras for Danton Heinen, because Danton Heinen was the winger on that line?
Why do you have to put me on the spot?
Because that's what I do. You do it to me all the time.
I mean, I'm just asking that so I can pull up the lineup. Yeah, so, okay, to buy myself some time. So, looking at the lineup, I mean, I could see a scenario where Jones replaces Delorier on the fourth line, and then Heinen is with Getzlaf and Terry, and then Zegras is with Steele and Silverberg, and then Courtois, Lundestrom, Raquel stay together.
Mm-hmm.
That would, because I think, man, if you take out Heinen, I know Jones has been going well, but if you take out Heinen and you have Zegras in there and you're still leaving Delorier in there, like you are, I just think that you're kind of taking a risk there, because as good as I think Zegras will be, you're hedging your bet a little bit by keeping Jones in there and taking Delorier out. I love that Aiken said today that the only line he for sure will not play on is the grinding line. He referred to it as the grinding line, which I would assume is the fourth line.
But why? Like, why is that a thing?
Line. Why can't every line be the grinding line in theory?
Yeah, that is very annoying. Really quick, I'm trying to look up.
Okay, I just want to say he didn't say that in the sense of like he's not a grinder. Just like if you're trying to play the bingo game of where he'll play, it just won't be that one.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like I got to Byron Bader's projection. He doesn't have this year in it, so that's the issue there. There's no D2, so
it would have probably gone up.
Yes, it would have gone up significantly with how he played. So let's get into some questions. So we got 2 DMs from Twitter that I want to get to, and then Twitch we will get to you. So let's hit these first before we get to them. Steve asked us on Twitter: Henrique, Fowler, Silverberg, and Shattenkirk have almost no trade value. Manson probably gets a second. So are Raquel and Gibson the only guys with in-season value? Would you agree with that assessment?
Which guys?
Do you think Henrique, Fowler, Silverberg, Shattenkirk have no trade value? Manson maybe gets you a second right now. So do you think that Raquel and Gibson are the only guys kind of in that age group that has trade value right now for the Ducks?
I do think Raquel is the highest value because of his contract, and because you could argue he's still the best player within that. I think with John Gibson, there's probably teams that would take him, but I don't even know what his rep really is around the league, right?
Oh, Lindholm does also. Sorry. That's one that was missed.
I would say Lindholm has value. I mean, the contract, which we kind of haven't talked about much as looking really bad right now, is the Fowler deal. I mean, that is an albatross because he's not playing very well this season either. So, yeah, I would agree with that overall assessment, though. Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yep. And then we got this one. Does Henrique's waiver debacle, this comes from William Lewis, call into question Murray's stability or suitability for the expansion draft? That's one thing we haven't really
Yes.
talked about, the impact of this on the expansion draft.
Why don't you take that away, since
So
that is your expertise?
really quick, Adam Henrique would be eligible for the expansion draft. To me, that's one of actually the flaws with putting him on waivers, is that if they would have lost him for nothing, there would have been the potential for them to expose him. And maybe after a good season, Seattle maybe would have taken him. They are going to need, like, one of the things of an expansion draft team is they do need to take on some salary to get to the cap floor, because most of the players they're going to take are going to be in the $1 or $2 million range. So it's not as if the cap or the contract is a necessary or is this huge issue for Seattle. So I think maybe there's a flaw there, because he may have been the guy you dangle for Seattle to take.
Possibly, but we don't,
Yeah.
The term is still kind of ugly. That being said, by the time the expansion draft rolls around, that term does lessen. So important to know. I would say that, yeah, like, we've known this for a while now. Like, this is not the first example of Bob Murray with questionable at best asset management. Like, this is something that's been known, at least in my head, that Bob Murray doesn't seem to really kind of have this good business sense of when to sell, when to buy, factoring in all possibilities. And this isn't like Bob Murray gets the blame for this because he is the one that is at the helm, but there is a group of guys in that room, right? This is a team decision. This isn't always just one person. And so, because these mistakes have been compiled over time, again, this goes to my theory or my belief that you just got to clean house. Like, there is just a thought process within that organization that is not working, and it's impossible to suss out who is not at fault in this scenario. And that sucks, because you don't want to fire people, you don't want to cost people their livelihood, but there's a business to run here. There are wins to be had. There are bigger and better things to accomplish. And, like, right now, this management group has just shown that they are not capable of that they're not the team to do it.
Yeah. So let's get into some questions from our Twitch chat now. So that was it from Twitter. So thank you so much. You can send us stuff on Twitter. We'll answer it. Same thing with emails. But let's get to Twitch, because this is the real fun part. We've had a lot of people. We're at 70 plus viewers for most of this podcast. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, so we do have the show on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond, or if the audio versions, we do a Twitch stream of the show each and every time at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can watch us kind of give out these takes, give out these opinions live, watch our reactions, watch our faces as we do those fun ad reads.
Yes, I was going to say the most important part.
Yeah, exactly. And you also get to interact not only with us, but with other Ducks fans in the Twitch chat. It's a fun little community, and you can also support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime gaming sub every month. So you can go ahead and use that. You can also use some bits. And so that guy Bobski used 46 bits and sent that to us because of Trevor Zegras wearing 46. Thank you so much.
Thank God he's 46 and not 13.
I mean, Zegras should wear number 99.
Oh no! Don't put that on.
Don't put that there. Sorry, it was a joke for the bits. It was for the bits. So here we go. Let's get to these questions. Spence Curry asks, "Who do you think should be traded in a rebuild?" So if this is potentially the start of the rebuild, what would you do? Who would you trade? Who would you not trade?
Anyone and everyone. Like, I know this sounds heartless, but I know that you want to keep some veterans around, but I just trade whoever I can get the maximum value for and kind of work my way down. So Silverberg is on the table for me. Henrique is, I mean,
obviously
he's on the table for everybody. Rickard Rakell, I still think he's a good player, and that the problem is you're really going to have to pay him.
Yeah, that's
in the near future. And like, we're kind of seeing it now that those contracts don't age well, or they might not age well. So Rakell is definitely on the table for me. I might try to get out of Danton Heinen if I possibly can. I will try my darndest to see if I can get someone to take Cam Fowler, because that contract is just, it's making my eyes hurt looking at it. And then Hampus Lindholm is like, I'm sorry if this is hurting the feelings of fans of the team, but this is the mindset you have to have if you're trying to really improve long term. So really anyone and everyone is on the table. There is absolutely no one on this roster at this point in time that is off limits. Zero.
Yep. I would agree with that.
Well, although I guess Zegras is on the roster, so he's not up there.
Yeah, literally.
He's not on
Bonnie also just gave us 46 bits. So thank you so much, Bonnie. So I agree with that. I think that you don't. I think there needs to be some remnants of older players just to fill roster spots in a way, and also in some fashion, if you do that whole scorched earth, you do need some salary on your team to hit the cap floor, and so I
But
would,
that's fine.
yeah,
That's achievable. You just do what the Red Wings do, right? Which
yeah.
is you take on salaries for picks.
Well, I would look at moving Raquel. I would look at basically. I would try to keep. I would probably try to just keep Silverberg and Lindholm, and that's it.
Yeah, like the thing is with Silverberg, I do think maybe it's a flawed belief that he like there's not a ton of term left on his deal. I mean, less than Fowler, for example. I do think he can have value defensively, just kind of stabilize. I think that that will age a little better. And like with Lindholm, I just still think that he can be a good NHL defenseman. I think that we've kind of learned in the last maybe 2 to 3 years that he's not really an elite tier defensive defenseman anymore. But at the very least, he's a guy who can kind of just stabilize your blue line as you try to work in the likes of Josh Mahura, Jamie Drysdale, so on and so forth.
Yep. Agreed with that. Real quick, this is something I saw earlier. My apologies. I can't remember who asked this question. It was something earlier, but I think it's
How
actually
dare
something important to ask.
How dare you?
Do you think Zegras is up for the rest of the year? Or do you think that it's just basically, do you think they burn a year right now?
It's so hard for me to say because this team is so unpredictable and at times illogical. Hard for me to say. If I were to put my life on it, which I do think I value my life, I would bet no, because this team has been so conservative, so cautious. Um, but I will say that he could just come in and be so good that
Yep.
he forces their hand.
Yeah, I think that's gonna happen. I think it's a yes. I think
So maybe in this scenario, I perish
I
because
think
of a bad bet.
yeah, I think he comes up and he does enough where they can't afford to send him down at that point. You just can't, and I think that's where
It's
we're at.
it's a big bet, but that like you've touched on this before, and I think it's a good point. Is this whole idea that, oh my God, you can't possibly burn a year? It's so bad. Never do it. The player actually will probably not be quite as good if he burns it off sooner, right? The longer that you extend it out, the more time he has to accumulate counting stats to drive up his price. So playing Zegras all of this year in a shorter season keeps that ability for him to produce down and helps the team side.
And from when we know about aging curves, he's going to be better next year and better the year after that. So you're getting a 19-year-old season, 20-year-old season, 21-year-old season under the ELC.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think Zegras' next contract will be?
He hasn't even played a game yet.
Hey, it's time. It's time
now,
to answer
now
that.
You're putting me on the spot. All right,
11 million?
Moving on.
Okay.
Fat Gerald asks, question, if Bob Murray's here, that's not happening on a guy that's an RFA. If it's a new GM, maybe.
He won't be.
Fat Gerald says, I've been hearing rumors that Gibson wants out. And there are those rumors. I don't know how much I believe in them. But what do you think are the chances that he gets traded?
I haven't heard those rumors, but I'm not like super plugged in on that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just me. I think that the chances he gets traded are not non-zero because of the existence of Lucas Dostal. I think that if he's only 20 and he's been really good in the AHL this year. So there's still going to be some development needed. But if the Ducks are going to go down this path of the rebuild, John Gibson is an interesting chip to cash in on because he's 27, which is young by goalie standards. He's kind of entering his prime, if anything. And he's got a ton of term left, but it's manageable in terms of the AAV. So I could see it happening. It's kind of maybe I'm waffling a little bit here, but I do think that it's not crazy to think that.
Yeah, I think so also. I mean, we really need to see kind of where this team goes.
My big issue with John Gibson is that we haven't seen him be that good over the last year and a half. I mean, he had a really dominant stretch to start the year, but he wasn't great last year. And right now, like, he's barely above zero in terms of GSAX. Like, he is almost below zero, which, for those who don't know what that means, like, goals saved above expected is, okay, we're counting the number of goals that a goalie is saving above what we would expect based on the number of shots that he's facing, which to me is a way better way of looking at it than save percentage. And Gibson is always, or at least in the first 3 years of Carlisle, Gibson really dominated that stat. Like, he was just destroying it, saving a bunch of goals. But in the last 2 years, maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's the Aikens effect. Who knows? He just has not been nearly as good. and now he's almost negative, which is crazy.
Yeah. Let's get some rapid fire questions in here as we're kind of nearing an hour and a half. That guy Bobsky asked, Zegras over under points versus Arizona in the 2 games, 2.5. Over under 2 points or 2.5 points.
Under.
Over. I know I said set your expectations low, but I'm going over.
No,
I'm gonna have fun. I'm
never that.
I'm going against my own beliefs here on setting expectations low and just going to the moon. You know, we haven't had a whole lot of fun, so let me do that. Shadow Ups Gaming says, do the Ducks have the ability to trade for Jack Eichel with the rumors spreading around him? I mean, the deal would have to center around a Gibson for Eichel swap.
So my issue with that situation is there are other teams that have better offers to make, aka the team up the road, the LA Kings. And if the Kings want Jack Eichel, I would assume that they can get him. So it would take some team like that backing out. It would cost the Ducks an arm and a leg to go and get Jack Eichel. And at this point where they're at in their rebuild, I think that they're just so far behind the point where getting a Jack Eichel is really kind of appropriate that I actually wouldn't do it at this point.
Yeah.
Is that controversial?
That's a little controversial because
I just think what we're learning is that they are at square zero right now. And when you get Jack Eichel, like, you need to be further along for that to be worth it. Because they're going to have to gut their system to get him.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I think you don't have to gut it if you have John Gibson is a centerpiece. I think John Gibson for Jack Eichel is a fair value swap.
I think you need to include more for the Ducks. Okay. But anyway.
All right. Anywho. The Honey Badger says, how does Zegras playing in the NHL change his status for the expansion draft? Does it even change anything? So I'll take this one. It does not. First and second year pros are exempt from the expansion draft. Whether he played in the NHL this year or in the AHL for the entire year, it doesn't matter. He would be considered a first-year pro. AHL games do count towards that on the whole. So that is not something that actually matters in this situation. So, no, it does not change anything for him. He is exempt. Same thing with Jamie Drysdale. Time Twitch asks, what is your final counting stats for Zegras? So let's go under the assumption that he plays the rest of the season. So 39 more games, I believe. Is that right? Have the Ducks played 17 games, or am I missing something here?
Let's go with 39.
39 games. How many goals, assists, and points?
I think he will get 7 goals and 14 assists.
I was going to go 20 points, so I was going to go 7 goals, 13 assists.
I mean, I think he's going to put up points in bunches. That's what he does. Well, he's going to play on the power play. He has the skill set. They're going to try, now the Ducks have a vested interest for this to work. So they're going to do whatever they can to get him in that position.
And I mean, NHL E isn't a perfect stat, especially in a smaller sample of 8 games. But if you were to update his 9 points in 8 games, that is an equivalent as of right now to a 45-point season over an 82-game season. 45 points over an 82-game season.
So close.
So right around basically a half. So if he plays 39 games, 20 points.
Yeah, I mean, him getting 7 goals would be huge for this team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
7 goals and 13, 14 assists. That would be huge. B1 Somd 48 says, scenario by 7th game, Zegras is centering the Ducks top line flanked by Comtois Raquel on his left and right wing. So this is assuming he moves to center. He has 2 goals and 2 assists in 6 games, and he stays with those players. What is his end of season stat line? So this is going similar. He's already has 4 points in 6 games. Do you think he stays on that trend? Do you think that maybe changes anything? Do you think that he just stays with where we're at of 20 points?
Yeah, the prediction I made earlier has kind of his AHL production in mind. So yeah, I'm sticking with that.
And so JJ Stone 22 says, do we know how juniors will affect Drysdale and others yet? So I don't think we know. There hasn't been an update. I have not seen any clarification. The OHL has said that they're planning to start in April. I don't know if there's any actual hard set date on that.
How many games are they going to play?
Yeah. And so, it depends. If the current negotiated NHL, CHL rules are intact, then yes, they have to go to the OHL. They cannot play in the AHL after that. There is some chatter of that not being applied this year because of it being such a weird year. So we really don't know what's going to happen there. Kind of on the topic of Drysdale. Drysdale also is impressing. In his time in junior, and I think in the AHL, he's playing a lot better than I expected him to. There was a play in last night's game where he was on a 2-on-1, challenge the guy with the puck, and stop the pass from happening. And on top of that, he has 8 points in 8 games.
Yeah.
Does Jamie Drysdale get a look at any point in time with this Ducks roster?
I think if Jamie Drysdale gets in the lineup this season, it will be like it will be a couple things will have to happen. He won't be able to go back to junior yet, and it'll be at a point where the season is just kind of. I don't think they're going to put him in as long as there's still a chance they can get into the playoffs. I think he's more of a late season kind of cameo guy, which, by the way, doesn't mean that it's correct. Like, you could argue he's good enough now and better than, like, say, a Ben Hutton. I don't know if that's necessarily true because defense is such a kind of hard position to project at his age, especially. So, but I would be curious to see it. I'll say that much. He's looked great in the AHL.
Brandasian asked, and I'll take this one. Do you think the Ducks will limit Mahura's game played so he doesn't meet the games played requirement for the expansion draft? So Mahura has met the games played requirement, or he is not exempt. He is a third-year pro. AHL games do count towards that. He's played 2 years in the AHL. This is his third year. He obviously has gotten some NHL games, so he is actually not exempt. He is eligible for the expansion draft. He is someone the Ducks have to look to protect. So whatever they do right now does not matter for his expansion draft eligibility on the whole. He is currently eligible. Ginger Wolf asks, can you guys explain how Kessler's, Perry's, and others' contracts affect the team? Are Eves and Backus still on the books? So going to Cap Friendly real quick, Eves and Backus, Eves is off the books. Eves and Bieksa. He said Eves and Bieksa. Eves and Bieksa are off the books.
Yeah, way off.
Ryan Kessler is currently still under contract and is under contract for this year and next year at 6.875. The key thing to know there is Frank Saravelli reported this, that 80% of that contract is covered by insurance at this point. So the Ducks actually aren't paying a whole lot out of pocket for that deal for the next 2 years, but that cap hit of 6.875 does remain. It is eligible to go on LTIR.
You said 80%? Like, how confident are we with that number?
Frank that is me trying to remember exactly what was in the report. I would check. Frank Saravelli
80% would leave him at about just over $1 million in terms of what they're paying.
Yeah, it's something around there. So don't quote me on that. Go see Frank Saravelli's reporting on it to be confident.
But they've got 1 more year of him on a no move clause. And then after that, it goes down to a modified no trade,
which isn't really going to matter at the end of the day.
I just love even talking about Kessler in the present tense. Like, he's got 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah.
And he's basically retired.
We're talking about Adam Henrique's deal and how that was bad right away. Ryan Kessler's still getting paid by the Ducks. Granted, not a lot.
And Ryan Kessler's deal was signed in the summer of 2016. Or sorry, 2015.
I mean, the thing with Bob Murray,
and that was a big bet that he would age well. And, like, it didn't take a genius to see the way he plays and think, maybe this isn't a guy you want to give 6 years to when he's in his late 20s. Maybe it's not a great idea. I mean, I feel like this is something that's kind of like a narrative that's died down over time, but it's still a demerit against Bob Murray, I would say.
Yeah, 100. I mean, this is the Bob Murray narrative of he's gone out of his way.
Of course, there's the argument of, well, you had to do it at the time because you got to stay within your window. But
yeah. So real quick, found the article, and yeah, it is 80% is what is being reported by Frank Saravelli. That 80% of the $13.3 million remaining to be paid out is covered by insurance, which makes it easier this was about the Ducks trading the deal, which to me doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, it's not actual real money that's being paid out. And then kind of going to the final person of Perry. Perry has been bought out. So this year there's a 6.625 mil cap hit. Then following 2 years, there's $2 million cap hit for him because of the buyout. So that's
maybe the most pointless buyout ever. I think, like, as the more time goes on, the more that buyout looks completely pointless. They haven't done anything of note or of benefit with that additional cap space. Has not panned out in any meaningful way. So, yeah, just another little dinger.
Fire Carlisle said, question, are the Ducks lacking a bad cop on the coaching staff? Really, it seems like the only person who holds them accountable is the GM.
I think they're lacking just good coaches on the coaching staff. I mean, I think that Dallas Aikens seems like a good motivator, seems like a good people person, but the X's and O's of this team have not been the strongest. The lineup decisions have not been the strongest. And so maybe I'm being too harsh, maybe I'm being too critical, but that to me is the bigger issue. Like that, this is the thing that we need to get away from when discussing this team is it's not about motivation. It's not about, accountability. These are just buzzwords to cover up the fact that there is not enough talent. This team is not constructed properly. They're depending too much on guys who are on the wrong side of their aging curve. That's what this is. That's what this season is about. I just don't want to hear anymore about how this is somehow about accountability or good cop, bad cop. That is not at all what matters here.
Yeah, and so we've got 2 questions from Kim Paffa that I want to get to. One, should we buy Zegras jerseys with his rookie number or with 13? Wait for 13. Wait for 13.
Okay.
And then if Zegras narrowly loses on the Calder Trophy, how pissed should the Samuelis be for management for keeping him out of the big club for this many games?
Well, who would be the front runner right now for the Calder Trophy? I haven't really been paying attention to that.
I haven't necessarily either. I don't think it is Lafreniere, though. Let me see if I can look up the rookie scoring. But I actually will take the other side of this. I actually think the Samuelis will probably be happy because that means they don't have to pay as much of a bonus.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're asking the people writing the checks, they might be a little happier that the check won't be as big.
Yeah, exactly. Josh Norris currently leads rookie scoring with 11. Kirill Kaprizov is tied there at 11 also. Tim Stützle at 9 points.
And Kaprizov hasn't even played that many games. So
yeah.
Anywho.
Yep, exactly. So let me see. We've got a couple more questions. What is Zegras' nickname going to be? I mean, it's hockey. You all know what it's going to be. It's going to be Z.
Zegs? Z? Oh, is it Z? Okay.
Yeah, I would say Z. Mighty Ducks 593. Do we hate Kessler for not retiring? No. Get your money.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if you're on the team side, you're probably like, well, what the heck? But because I actually don't know how this works within the contracts, because if he's physically unable to play, how does that work? I would imagine that part of this is put into the contracts in the CBA that a player doesn't just lose out on his money if he's hurt, right? And so, no, you shouldn't hate the guy for trying to get his money. Like,
yeah,
that's ridiculous.
and I mean, he played through everything and got hurt while he's on the Ducks. He should be paid if he's hurt and cannot do anything. I mean, here's the thing: the Ducks signed that deal. It's not just Kessler that signed that deal. It is both parties to that. Kessler is. Basically Kessler is eligible to get all that money if he wants it, and so
accountability.
Yeah, shocking.
Accountability.
Shocking.
Is it a two-way street?
Yeah, shocking. We should really briefly point that out. I love that Bob Murray says accountability is so important, and yet it feels as if no one holds him. No, he doesn't allow himself to be held accountable for anything. Just putting that out there. B1 Samdi 48 says he's wondering why you would be okay with trading Heinen.
I just don't really think he's a guy who does much for you. He's 25. He's going to be an RFA. So I think teams can talk themselves into wanting him. And if you just get a pick for him, like a third, or I don't know, he's just not a guy I'm really high on moving forward. And I think if you just get something in return where you can kind of have a little more control over who's going to be a part of this team long term, that makes more sense to me. Maybe I'm being a little harsh. Maybe Heinen has shown he's good enough to stick around long term, but I am of the mind of just scorched earth.
Do we? At what point do we say that was a bad deal? Can we say that right now? Because Nick Ritchie looks really good in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, and maybe I haven't done enough research on the other side of this equation, but has Nick Ritchie looked better now than Heinen ever looked in Boston? Because if the answer is yes, then it is a bad deal, because you can't just say, oh, well, he's doing better because he's in Boston. If he's doing better in Boston than Heinen did in Boston, and Heinen isn't doing as well as Ritchie was in Anaheim, then I think you have a pretty strong case that this wasn't a great deal. That being said, I think it's still an okay-ish deal. it's going to be hard for me to ever get to the point and to say this is a terrible deal. I do think, though, that the player evaluation side of Richie was very poor. I don't really care about the whole conditioning thing. I don't care about the fact that he took penalties. That is something that you can, hey, work on internally. And I know that they probably tried and maybe they failed. But even still, like, he is just so impactful at 5-on-5 that it's just kind of worth it. You just live with it. But there are so many people that just don't see it that way that I'm not gonna go any further. It is what it is.
So 2 questions here. Let's end with these 2. Mighty Ducks 593 asks, question: do the Ducks need more grit? No
more grit. No more grit.
Get rid of the grit. Get rid of the grind line. This team
grind line.
This team needs more skill. This team needs way more skill. Get rid of the entire 4th line. Just shoot them out and get more skilled players on this roster. And let's end with this. Dalton Key says, do the Ducks win tomorrow? Let's end with that.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
You're ignoring questions for me. How dare you?
Oh,
for one question.
Whether it's the Ducks or the Habs? Because that's not even a question worth asking. You're a Habs fan.
Yeah, I actually just don't know what that's referring to. Like, who's better right now?
No, he's asking who you're more of a fan of.
The Habs, although right now they're playing with my emotions, losing to the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
And Carey Price looking just washed doesn't also help.
Yeah. So I say the Ducks lose tomorrow. I don't feel they just didn't look great. I think they'll look better against the Coyotes than they did. I think that they will. I think Zegras will have a point in the game, but I think overall the Ducks are not going to end up going to win tomorrow.
One thing that was really confusing that Aiken said today, 2 things. He said that the Coyotes are a team that likes to play a track meet style, which that's not what I've seen from them, but I haven't watched a ton of them lately. And he basically called them a diving team.
Like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like he did everything but say that they're a team that dives. And I thought that was very odd. But hey, they're in the trenches, so we'll let them have that.
Yeah. And want to say this, Bonnie, the biggest, I think, optimist and light in our Twitch chat and just kind of in all of Ducks fandom. I want to say she says, yes, the Ducks will win tomorrow.
I mean, they could.
Yeah.
Like, the Coyotes aren't that good. The Ducks haven't shown that they're better than the Coyotes, but the Trevor Zegras magic, it will work.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Let's go with it.
Should we get out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here. We're at an hour 40. This has been a big show. This is a lot of people. We've had a lot of people tune in for us. So thank you, everyone in the Twitch chat. It's been thriving tonight. It's been bumping. It's been a lot of fun. I want to just say thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun. I'm using a different computer than I usually do, so I was able to keep track of this chat, and I'm loving it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening, who's listening, whether it's on YouTube or in the recorded version, of course. Big shout out to everybody there. So wrapping on up here, if you enjoy our show, if you like what we do here, there are a number of ways that you can support us. I think the biggest one, the one that you get the most benefit out of, is our Patreon page. So that's at patreon.com/crashthepond. We give you 3 tiers of support. So for $1 a month, $1 pledge a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord chat, which I'm happy to report has kind of just taken on a life of its own this season. In the early days, it was, not as many people, but still some good discussion, but just not quite as lively. And now Jake and I won't even go there sometimes for a good while. And there will just be a raging conversation about, God knows what, just some very minute thing.
The fact that the Ducks need to trade someone to Ottawa to get Jack Kopaka back.
Yeah. Just great stuff like that. So yeah, if you're looking to just, give us a little support, and also you get to join this very great community of diehard fans. Everyone is super friendly in there. You've got Nate just raging out during the games when the Ducks aren't playing well. Everybody in there is just super friendly, and I think it's a great kind of wholesome place, which is rare on the internet. Now, for $5 a month, you get access both to the Discord chat, and you also get access to 2 bonus episodes a month. And these are a lot of fun because, despite the fact that we go almost 2 hours on these shows sometimes, We have to work through what happened that week. We have to get through all the different items. And especially in a week like this, we don't really get as much time to really flesh out these bigger topics. We get an opportunity to do that on the Patreon shows. We'll deep dive the Ducks, bigger topics there. We'll also talk league wide, do rankings, awards. We just did letter grades for every single Ducks player at the quarter mark on our last show. We also talk about video games, Mandalorian. At some point, Jake believes he can get me to talk about WandaVision.
Yeah, you are.
So
You are whether you want to or not.
it's extremely unlikely that I will, but we'll keep the dream alive for now. Hey, maybe I will watch it. Now for $15 a month. So you still get access to the chat, to the episodes, but you also get access to our watch along. And to me, this is a new, very exciting feature, which has a lot of potential. It's basically us doing an alternative broadcast to the game. So while the games are happening, twice a month, we will do a live commentary of the game and play-by-play analysis, stats, matchup. Just think everything you don't exactly get from your traditional hockey broadcast. We give you that and more. We give you a link that you can go to where there will also be a chat in game. So we'll also respond to questions, chat with you guys. It's a lot of fun. It is a bigger commitment, but I do think if you're a diehard fan and you love our show, that's the tier for you. You get the maximum benefit. Now, of course, finances are tight. That's totally understandable.
Real quick. Want to jump in? I'm just throwing this on you. I think we have to do a watch along this week no matter what. I think we do it.
I agree.
I think we do it for Wednesday's game against the Coyotes.
We'll play it by ear depending on when Zegras actually debuts. So it could be as early as tonight if you're listening on Monday. It could be as early as Wednesday. We'll see. But we will do a watch along for the Zegras debut. Whenever that is.
Maybe not debut. We'll see. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss off air, but Jake, we will do during one of the two games.
Now Jake is walking it back. Interesting.
Standard.
Interesting. Just throwing a bomb in there and then walking back.
Hey, I said Wednesday. You then threw out Monday.
Well, whatever. The point is, go check that out. I think that if you're a diehard fan of this team and you enjoy our show, you will enjoy these perks. Now, of course, if you don't have money to just shell out right now, totally get it. No problem. There's still a bunch of great ways you can support us. Search us up on Apple Podcasts. Type in Crash the Pond, and you can leave a rating and a review. Those actually do matter. Believe it or not, they help us, just kind of stay relevant, climb up those charts, and, it matters. That being said, the reviews are just fun. I genuinely love just reading them because there is a very wide spectrum of reviews. They go from completely insane to inappropriate to deep and heartfelt and just everything in between, different permutations of that. And I don't have it up now, Jake, but do you want to read the new review we got this week?
So we got one. It says, awesome podcast, 5 stars. It's nice to have a Ducks podcast that keeps it real. Appreciate you guys. You know how last week we said it was inappropriate name? Is that what we went with? This is someone with that same name but said not, and then the inappropriate name. So yeah, appreciate the relevancy there.
That shows an attention to detail, and we're all about attention to detail here.
I very much enjoyed viewing that the name was not that. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you for that. Of course, a couple of other ways here. YouTube.com/crashthepond. If you enjoy watching the show in video format, well, then we've got you covered there. Make sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you know when our videos go up. We've got a thriving comment community there, which I do enjoy reading. Jake enjoys responding. Maybe at some point I'll get into the response game.
Maybe you should.
I'm a lurker right now. I'm just biding my time. And what else do we got here? Oh yeah, make sure to check out our website, crashthepond.com. Few different things on there. After every Ducks mini series or set, whatever you want to call it, we do 5 takeaways. Jake, CJ, and I, we revolve through that, and we give you different stats, different things to kind of take away from those games. So if you didn't get to watch them, or if you did watch them, you have a good feel for kind of what happened there. We also have a shop, crashthepond.com/shop. So if you like our logo, or you want to find out what our logo looks like, go to the website. We've got t-shirts. I mean, we got some beautiful white, orange or black. You get to pick. We've got the Ducks whole color spectrum there, but we also have different versions of the actual logo. So we've got an eggplant and jade version of our Crash the Pond logo, which is just gorgeous with the Honda Center arches, palm trees, hockey sticks. You know the deal. We've got that in eggplant and jade. We've got it in the orange and black. So whether your team bring back the Mighty Ducks or team love the orange and black, we've got you covered either way. We've also got hoodies, black, white, and gray. So, it's still a little chilly out here in Southern California, or judging based off of our ad read, it's still very cold in other parts of the country. Also watching the news. So maybe a hoodie would help. And you could also support our show there. So that's at crashthepond.com/shop. Make sure to check us out on social media at Crash the Pond on Twitter, Crash the Pond on Facebook. Just search us there. Jake is on Twitter at Reindeer Games 91. Make sure to give him a follow. And I'm also on Twitter, I suppose, at Felix_Sicard. So that will do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Hope that you are hanging in there in what is a tough season, but there are better days ahead. And we will talk to you at the next podcast. Have a great week.
Bye.